Hi, I'm Benny Stefan. I just want to tell you my thoughts and my tips and ideas how I make my images so sharp. First thing, to make sure clean lens and sensor. You know, when you have dark glasses or sunglasses, whatever you're wearing, and you have it's dirty by fingerprints or dust, whatever, it's quite annoying, and you're trying to clean it up to see better. That's the same with your camera. That's the first thing you want to do before you're doing anything else, to make sure you're shooting raw. There's two types of image file on your camera. There's a JPEG and there's a RAW. The JPEG use a lot of compression, a lot of processing and over sharpening, but the RAW preserve all the data information from the picture, from the camera sensor, assembled and into a container called RAW. I use only RAW because you have more flexibility in post. You have more details on that RAW files. The third thing is make sure you use 3:2 or 4:3 aspect ratio. So this is my camera, right? And then if I go to another aspect ratio, you see my camera, it shows on the whole display. Or this one, for example, it shows me only the square. So it crops the camera and apply this ratio. Square whole screen camera 4:3. 4:3 is the default aspect ratio, so it uses the whole sensor. So same on the camera. Most camera use 3:2. So when you use 3:2, you use the whole sensor, the full resolution of your camera. Obviously you're not gonna cut edges as the phone does, or you must go and check what's the quality, what's the aspect ratio. Make sure you don't use the crop mode on DSLR. For example, I have on a mirrorless and I can go onto crop mode. It's called APS-C Super 35. That means I can crop in the sensor. I have more reach and I use that mode. I don't have a lot of details. I can see and I look on the computer, what is wrong with this picture? I don't have a lot of sharpness and a lot of resolution, and I see, oh no, it was shot on crop mode. Why? Why? So rarely when I need to go zoom into the bird or something, I put it in crop mode, but all the time I leave it on the full size. So make sure you don't do my mistakes. Make sure your subject is very well lit. That's another problem that I found out by myself when I started. And I had the camera, I had the lens, good lens, I was thinking from now on camera, it will make nice portraits, nice photographs by itself. It would be so easy, and it wasn't like that. I was struggling and I didn't know. So the first thing I've done, I bought a light, a flash, and one of these things you can take it off, and you see you have a yellow, a gold one, a white, black one, silver one. So it opens up. The most annoying thing, you need to have somebody to hold it, but this is so useful. You can use a piece of fabric or white bed sheet, but this is inexpensive. You can buy for 20 or 30 bucks. It's really nice because you can pack it so small. Also I bought some flash, so I felt the difference when I've seen the results. When you're shooting and less light, the camera will struggle, and you have to raise some ISO, so we'll talk about that. Make sure your shutter speed is high enough. When you're shooting and you have a low shutter speed and you take the picture, the subject will be blurry, because maybe you moving the camera when you hold it, or the subject is moving. You need to have at least 1/25 of a second or 1/60 of a second. That's why I'm using. Maybe for your camera could be lower. On some lenses is the limit 80 of a second or 50 of a second, the minimum. I mean, you have to hold it and shoot with higher shutter speed, so keep that in mind. Make sure you use the right autofocus. Yes, so when I'm shooting with my camera, I use face or eye autofocus. Will focus on the eye or the face. So depends of your camera. But if your camera really struggle, you can choose a small spot, the focus spot on the eye, and focus there, and then press the button, and will be sharp, pin sharp on the eye. Make sure you use low ISO. When you use low ISO, you will get the cleanest and the sharpest results. You have to check on daylight, always use the lowest. The sensibility of the sensor is increasing when you raise the ISO, so keep it low. I shoot on 100. It gives me the cleanest images, so shoot on low ISO. But sometimes you need it higher, like for example when you're shooting in the evening and it's not enough light, so you have to raise it up. So you have to use artificial light or something like this to give more light on the subject face. Make sure not frame your subject on edge. Yeah, when you put your subject on the sides, will not be sharp because the camera is sharp on the middle of the frame. So when it's low light and you use a low shutter speed, you have to keep your camera close to your body and hold it steady. Make sure step down your aperture. When you use your aperture to the lowest, the f number, you'll get a creamier, blurry background and more bokeh. So always try to step down, to increase the f number. You will see the difference. You have to check, but with which lens is different. But when you step down the aperture, you always will have better sharpness on the lens. Make sure you use a prime lens. So there's two kind of lenses. There's a prime lens and there's zoom lenses. The prime lenses doesn't zoom in. You have to work with your feet and zoom, or you want to go back with your feet, you zoom out. It's two types. It's not, I don't see it wrong or right. So with the zoom you can zoom, it's self-explanatory, but with the primes you have more sharpness and you can go lower f-stop. You can go wide aperture, the iris will go wider and doesn't have as many parts inside the lens that are moving as on zoom lens. Make sure your camera has a lot of megapixels. It depends what you're doing. So if you print, choose a higher megapixel. If you don't print and you use on social media, it's good enough 24 or even lower to be honest. Make sure you use lens hood. When you use lens hood, when you hold it on the sunlight, you will get, and light will hit the front element. The effect of those, when you look on the pictures after you take the picture, you will see not a good enough contrast and not good enough sharpness on the pictures. Make sure your model is not moving. If it's bright outside and you raise the shutter speed so it can move, you can freeze the action. But when it's low light, tell the model or put your subject to not move. Make sure your lens is calibrated. Use a DSLR. You have to check with your lens if it's calibrated. You focus on some subject or a model and check the picture. You can feel it is not sharp. The focus could be a little bit further or backwards. So you have to calibrate. You have to calibrate the focus. Could be a little bit more further or a little bit back, so you can adjust on a camera. Look on YouTube how to calibrate my lens. So that's pretty much it. make sure you use tripod. When you use a tripod, you can lower shutter speed as much as you can. I lower the shutter speed on 30 seconds. I mean, you can gain a lot of light if you're shooting, for example, landscape. You want to see in the dark, you want to photograph the stars. So always put it on tripod and use timer. Make sure you use OSS VR lens. The OSS or VR lens, it's the same thing, is stabilization on the lens. When you're shooting wild photography, sports, and you really need to have a stabilized image, is really important to have a lens stabilized. So if you don't have that, at least you can go and have a camera that have some image stabilization. It's called IBIS. The feature on the camera that it's moving the sensor to compensate your shakiness. It will stabilize your footage or your picture on low light or when you shoot with longer lenses. So very important. Make sure you apply contrast and sharpness. When you edit your picture, make sure you apply some sharpness, but make sure you don't apply too much. Make sure you crop and export for IG and Facebook. I mean, when you want to export the picture, for example, by 5 for vertical image. If you want to use it a square, it's 1 by 1. And for landscape, I believe is 1.91 by 1. On exporting, there is quality. I choose 100% and then put the resolution 2160, the shortest part, and click export if it's for Instagram. If I choose to export it for Facebook, I choose 2048 pixels. Let me go back through those things. So make sure you have clean lens and sensor before use. Make sure you're shooting RAW. Make sure you use 3x2 or 4x3, depend of your camera. Make sure you don't use a crop mode. Make sure your subject is very well lit. Make sure you have the shutter speed higher enough on low light. Use the right autofocus. Make sure you use low ISO. Make sure not frame your subject on the edge. Make sure you keep your camera steady. Make sure step down your aperture, your iris. Make sure you use a prime lens. Sure, camera has a lot of megapixels. Make sure you use lens hood. Make sure motor is not moving too much. Make sure your lens is calibrated. Make sure you use a tripod. Make sure you use stabilized lens or stabilized camera. So make sure you apply contrast and sharpen. Make sure you crop it and export for Instagram, Facebook. I really hope this video helped you out. If you really like this video, like my content, and you want some advice on photography or videography, just let me know. Click the like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified on further uploads. Bye. I'm quite overspoke, but who cares? I have to finish this video. I was looking to make this video for a long time and finish it. I shot it 3 times already and never finished it. So for now, right now I'm just going for it. I don't know if I'm getting too nerdy about this stuff, but I know it is the best. So believe me, it will worth it.